Hello everyone, I'm Christian Arcelia and my partner, Kajimi Kabalili, and we're from Group 2. So now, we're going to talk about Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So are you ready? Because I'm ready. So let's start.
Jean Piaget is a Swiss psychologist famous for his work on child development and his theory on cognitive development. Piaget is a pioneer in the field of children's education. He fundamentally changed the way that educators view how a child learns. Piaget had a fondness for biology early on in his life, and later on he integrated this liking for philosophy. Before psychology, he was trained in natural history and philosophy. Regarding philosophy, his focus became epistemology, which is knowledge and rational belief systems. And now, let's review some of the important ideas used by Piaget. First is schema. Schemas, which are different categories of learning that we use to understand the world around us. Schemas are the building block of knowledge. Schema, according to Piaget, he used this term schema to refer to the cognitive structures by which individuals intellectually adapt and organize their environment. So, it is an individual ways to understand or create meaning about a thing or experiences. For example, a child sees a dog for the first time. He creates his own schema of what a dog is. It has four legs and a tail. It barks. It's furry. The child then put the description of a dog on file in his mind, which is his schema of a dog. Looks at the animals and says, four legs, tails, bark, furry, that's a dog. Next is assimilation. Assimilation is another important term. It is where we change new information to fit into a schema. For example, when a child learns the word dog, they might call all four-legged animals dogs, even horses, for example. Or when the child sees another dog, this time a little smaller one, he would make sense of what he is seeing by adding this new information like a different-looking dog into his schema of dog. And now we proceed to accommodation. Accommodation is the process of creating a new schema. Like if the same child now sees another animals that looks a little bit like a dog, for example, is a goat. So the child fit his schema of a dog and say, "Look, mommy, what a funny looking dog. Its bark is funny too." Then the mommy explains, "That's not a funny looking dog. That's a goat." With mommy's further description, the child will now create a new schema of the goat. He now adds a new file in his filing cabinet. Piaget believed that the people have the natural need to understand how the world works and to find order, structure, and predictability in their life. Equilibration is achieving proper balance between assimilation and accommodation. So, speaking of equilibration, from the word equal, there should be a balance between the two processes. For example, when our experiences do not match our schema, we experience cognitive disequilibrium. So, if we will not have a balance of the two processes, which are the accommodation and assimilation, we will now be experiencing the opposite of course for equilibration. So, this means that there is a discrepancy between what is perceived and what is understood. So, that's why we need to exert effort through assimilation and accommodation to establish equilibrium once more. So, cognitive development involves a continuous effort to adapt to the environment in terms of assimilation and accommodation. So that's why if we are parents, our role as parents are very important because we are the one who make our children understand the things that they confused at. We are the one who correct them on what they do. So in this sense, Piaget's theory is similar in nature to other constructivist perspectives of learning like Brunner and Vygotsky.
So after the basic cognitive concepts by Jean Piaget, let us now proceed to Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So we have four stages of cognitive development. First stage is sensory motor stage. Second stage, pre-operational stage. And the third stage, concrete operational stage. And the last stage, formal operational stage. The sensory motor stage. The first stage corresponds from birth to infancy. This is the stage when a child who is initially reflexive in grasping, sucking, and reaching becomes more organized in his movement and activity. So the term sensory motor focuses on the importance or prominence of the senses, of course from the word sensory or senses and muscle movement through which the infant comes to learn about himself and the world. So in working with children in the sensory motor stage, we should take note as a future educator and as teacher that we should aim to provide a rich and stimulating environment with the appropriate objects to play with, because in this stage the child begins to interact with the environment. So the next stage is pre-operational stage. It covers from about 2 to 7 years old, roughly corresponding to the preschool years. Intelligence at this stage is intuitive in nature. At this stage, the child can now make mental representations and is able to pretend. The child is now ever closer to the use of symbols. This stage is highlighted by the following: the symbolic function, egocentrism, centration, irreversibility, animism, and transductive reasoning. So the third stage is concrete operational stage. This stage is characterized by the ability of the child to think logically but only in terms of concrete objects. This covers approximately the ages between 8 to 11 years of the elementary school years. The concrete operational stage is marked by the following: it is the decentering, reversibility, conservation, and seriation. And the last stage is formal operational stage. In the final stage of formal operations covering ages between 12 and 15 years, thinking becomes more logical. They can now solve abstract problems and can hypothesize. This stage is characterized by the following: the hypothetical reasoning, analogical reasoning, and the deductive reasoning. So I have here a quotation from John Piaget. The principal goal of education in the schools should be creating men and women who are capable of doing new things, not simply repeating what other generations have done. So that would be all our discussion, and thank you so much.